Hello, this is a Pacesetter training video on how to maneuver and general navigation within the coverages and loss tab within the Xactimate claim. This is where you would normally do something like edit or change the type or cause of loss, change the deductible, and select loss type. So let's begin by talking about the type of loss and cause of loss. You'll notice that up at the top right corner in the loss info section, we have the type of loss, and this is generally already populated when you download the claim. And then if we look over here to the left in the second row, we see cause of loss. This is generally set to unspecified. And by the way, before we continue, in case you are not sure how to get to this page within your claim, within the navigation area, simply select the claim info option, and then this page will open, which allows you to select these tabs right here at the top: insured info, coverages and loss, and parameters. And we will have some other videos on a couple of these too, so that you'll get a little bit more information on how to navigate these areas. Okay, so let's select the coverages and loss again. Let's go back to where we were. So let's say that you come down and look at the claim here. The claim is downloaded with a hail loss. We have unspecified here. This always has to be filled out. We can't leave this as unspecified. If it is a hail loss, we'll talk about that briefly. Sometimes this is set incorrectly when the claim is set up. But let's say in this case it's a hail loss, the insured confirms that, you get back to write the estimate. Simply go to the cause of loss area, drop this menu down, and in this case you'll just have three options, and hail obviously is the correct selection. That's all we would need to do there. Same with wind. If the claim came down, it was a wind loss. Let's select wind here. And we would go over to the cause of loss field, drop the menu down. You'll see that we have a few other options. In this case, it's wind and wind-driven rain and water. Now, if it's just a straight wind claim, it may also have wind-driven rain into the interior of a structure, but if it's just wind in general, we have shingles blown off, some siding blown down, a tree fell on a house due to wind, and we also may have wind-driven rain and water. Wind itself would be the correct selection. For cause of loss, to select wind-driven rain and water, in this case, we would select this if the only damage we had on the loss was interior wind-driven rain and water, and we had no exterior wind damage. Another thing we just mentioned that we'll talk about briefly is sometimes the type of loss that's sent down to you may not be correct. So let's say, for instance, that you get the claim and it's set to water plumbing. And then you talk to the insured or go to the loss and find out, no, it's actually not a plumbing loss. It was coded incorrectly, and we need to change this. Let's say it's a wind claim. So simply, under the type of loss, you would drop this menu down with the three horizontal bars to get this context menu. Select the correct cause of loss. In this case, we're just going to say wind. Select OK. Now we've changed the cause of loss to the correct cause of loss, or rather type of loss. And again, remember, we have to go over to cause of loss always and make sure that we have something selected here that corresponds correctly with the type of loss and the loss on the claim that you inspected. So let's just select wind. And it's that simple. So the point is make sure these two fields are set correctly in accordance with your loss. If you have any questions on what that may be to interpret that, you can certainly call your manager or claim supervisor, and they'll help you. The other thing I want to look at briefly before we move on is this field right here, roof damage. So let's say we have a hail claim, and let's pretend that it is coded correctly. So we'll select hail. This is the way the claim would be assigned to you. Remember, we're going to go over here to cause of loss, select hail. What roof damage is a small drop down that allows you to select two options. And what you want to put here is generally what's going on with the roofs. If you're doing repairs and replacements to all the roofs, maybe the house, the garage, maybe a shed, if you're not replacing fully any of the entire roofs, then we would select partial repair replacement. If you are replacing any of the roofs in their entirety, then we would select total replacement. And just to clarify, we would still select total replacement even if you were repairing some roofs but replacing another roof. So let's say we had some minor damages on the house and we were going to do some repairing to the house per shingle or maybe just a facet or a slope, and that was it. But we were replacing the entire garage roof. In that case, we would still select total replacement. The next area is the applying the deductible. This will come down as typically set to across all coverages. The amount will usually always be set to the policy deductible. It's check it. It may be correct, it may be not. Sometimes they're coded incorrectly. Another thing we see often is there may be two deductibles. For instance, there may be a policy deductible, in this case of $3,000, and maybe the policy has a wind and hail deductible of 1%. And let's say the coverage limit for the dwelling is $600,000. So 1% of that dwelling limit would be $6,000. So we might have a $3,000 standard policy deductible and a $6,000 or 1% wind and hail deductible. Again, the policy deductible is typically what's going to be listed in here when the claim is set up and sent down to you. Check this, because if you have a wind and hail claim, you will need to go in and manually change this if there is an applicable wind and hail deductible. So in this case, we would just change this to $6,000. Make sure you check that. Always check the deductible and just make sure it's correct. This is a big point to look at before you send your claim up. File reviewers will look at this, and if this is incorrect, they will definitely send the file back to you and have you make these corrections. Under the loss type, typically it comes down set to covered loss. It may be blank, but you do have to select one of these four options in loss type, or the internal auditor or inspector, when you set the claim to completed status and try to upload it, it won't let you upload the claim if you don't make a selection here. Covered loss would be if we find damages at the inspection that are covered under the policy and they're coinciding with the date of loss and cause of loss. So we're paying for damages. That would be a covered loss. The other three are variations of what may happen with or without an inspection. So for instance, a non-denial letter may be dealing with something like the insured withdrew the claim, or maybe you didn't contact the insured after multiple attempts in several days. The insured never called you back, so you're going to close the claim for no contact. In this case, this would be a non-denial letter. You would select this, and if you'll notice, it opens up an area at the bottom where you can type a description, which you must do. And you would just type a short description in here, so say no contact. If we were talking about that was the situation. If the insured withdrew the claim, claim withdrawn by insured. So just put a brief description in here. And again, this would be for a non-denial letter. We're not denying anything, but we do need to send a letter out to the insured that we tried to contact you or that you withdrew the claim. It's an official acknowledgement from the carrier to the insured through the form of a letter. The desk adjuster will send this out to the insured. Partial denial would be what you would select if, let's get this out of here and delete this real quick. Partial denial would be if you do the inspection and we are paying for some damages under the policy, but we are denying some of the other damages. For instance, we have some wind or hail damage to the outside of the house, but we have groundwater that got under a door and damaged something in the kitchen. We're going to deny that coverage under groundwater. So we would be doing a partial denial. In this case, under the cause for partial denial, we would just type a brief scenario and explanation of what we're denying. No coverage, groundwater in kitchen. Again, just a brief description of what we're denying. Denial, this option would represent we're making a full denial. There would be no coverages in the inspection that allow us to write and pay for under the policy coverages. But we may find damages that are claimed by the insured or presented by them or their PA, that we are denying. If we're doing all of those denials for all of the damages, that would be a full denial. Again, just type a brief description in here of what the damages are that we are denying. Pretty simple stuff. So that concludes this training session on the coverages and loss tab in the Xactimate claim. If you have any other questions, as always, contact your claim supervisor or account manager. We'll be happy to help you. Thanks and have a great day.